Yesterday, Donald Trump was, for a third time, arrested and arraigned, this time in Washington, D.C., of course, in relation to the second federal indictment, third indictment total on charges related to his attempts to overturn, potentially unlawfully, the results of the 2020 election, all of the schemes and conspiracies involved in that effort. And I want to look at some details from his arraignment and kind of him responding to it. And I'll get to in just a moment a clip of him before heading back to, I guess, Mar-a-Lago as he was leaving DC, responding to the day, his arraignment. And apparently he was PO'd, very unhappy. Sour was one of the words used in reporting to describe him. We'll get to all of that. But first, just quickly, here is the news from the Independent. Donald Trump appeared at a Washington, D.C. court on Thursday, the 3rd of August, to be formally arrested and arraigned on charges of conspiring to overturn the 2020 presidential election. The former president pleaded not guilty to all 4 charges against him. Mr. Trump was on Tuesday indicted by a grand jury hearing evidence in special counsel Jack Smith's investigation into the alleged conspiracy to overturn the election and the resulting January 6th Capitol riot. And then we'll get to what that reporting goes on to describe, which is this clip of him unhappy before leaving, responding to what had just happened.
Statement.
Okay, let's listen.
Let's listen in.
Well, thank you very much. This is a very sad day for America, and it was also
not sad for me.
So very sad driving through Washington, D.C. and seeing the filth and the decay and all of the broken buildings and walls and the graffiti. This is not the place that I left. It's a very sad thing to see it. When you look at what's happening, this is a persecution of a political opponent. This was never supposed to happen in America. This is the persecution of the person that's leading by very, very substantial numbers in the Republican primary and leading Biden by a lot. So if you can't beat him, you persecute him or you prosecute him. We can't let this happen in America. Thank you very much.
Do you want these trials to happen before the 2024?
To make the case that this is all political persecution, you would first have to have evidence of that, but also answer for why there's so much evidence of your potential crimes. If this is all being fabricated to go after you and is an example of America falling apart, then what the heck is all this evidence? And that's the thing that I've said time and time again, that you'll notice if you watch, as I do so much to prepare for the show, the right-wing media kind of response to all these different events. There's no discussion really of the evidence. And what we've seen, especially with this most recent indictment, is kind of an argument against a point that's not being made. So they'll say a whole diatribe, they'll put forward this whole argument, this whole monologue about how people shouldn't be persecuted, prosecuted for their freedom of speech. And Trump is. But that's not even at all. Actually, the indictment explicitly said that's not what this is about. It's about the actions that were taken, the fake elector scheme, pressuring of election officials, the broader attempt to disenfranchise voters, and trying to get VP Mike Pence not to do his role constitutionally and all that. It doesn't have to do with his First Amendment right. So why are you even bringing that up? You're making no effort to actually engage with the accusations against Trump. Because if you engaged, if right-wing media broadly, if Trump, if his allies engaged with the actual accusations and the evidence being brought forward, they would fail miserably, or they would have to be more honest and admit, okay, yeah, maybe it's not an example of America falling apart, him being held accountable. It's an example of the system working as it should in this case. Even though Trump's powerful, well-connected, wealthy, he's being held accountable. Then here was his true social response. Considering the fact that I had had to fly to a filthy, dirty, falling apart and very unsafe Washington, D.C. By the way, this is a double standard that's constantly present in American politics. Republican lawmakers and Republican figures can talk about blue areas of the country like this with, I guess, no political repercussions. But if a Democrat said this about a red area, all hell would break loose. And even liberal media would freak out about that. But continuing today, and that I was then arrested by my political opponent, no you weren't, who is losing badly to me in the polls, crooked Joe Biden. It was a very good day, he says, despite those things. And if we continue with his truth social feed that is not loading here. Oh, there we go. Lots of polls about how he's beating everyone. And then very recently, he says, every one of these many fake charges filed against me by the corrupt Biden DOJ could have been filed 2.5 years ago. Well, it takes a while to do an extensive investigation like this one, but they waited and waited until I became dominant in the polls, and then they filed them all, including locals, right in the middle of my campaign. They want anyone or anybody but Trump. Not fair and perhaps not legal election interference. So I don't even have time to get through every contradiction when we see these talking points. But first, he says they waited until he became dominant in the polls. Trump has been saying that he's dominant in the polls since forever, all the time, anytime, no matter what the situation is, no matter the truth of that statement, he always is dominant in the polls in his mind. So when would you be allowed to file charges? And then he says they want anybody but Trump, but then we'll turn around and say the indictments are helping him in the polls. So that's helping you. They don't want you, so they're indicting you, but they do want you, so they're indicting you because it helps you. I don't know. Very wacky stuff for sure. And now I'll get to Caitlin Collins on CNN talking about Trump's state of mind on all of this.
And Jake, inside that courthouse behind me, obviously Trump was taken into custody. He was processed. He pleaded not guilty himself to the charges against him. A federal magistrate judge then set the next court date for the 28th, just a few weeks from now. That is when it's expected that a trial date will be set. But also, I'm learning tonight that Trump left here in a sour and dejected mood. He was, quote, pissed off, according to someone who spoke to him. That came after he had motorcaded through that Washington traffic, had that processing part that happened here. He then went to the tarmac, where he was expected to take questions from reporters who were there. It was raining, though, and they changed their plans. He did not take any questions, and instead, departing Washington as he held this umbrella that was handed to him by his co-defendant in the...
So then they play the clip that we already looked at, and then we get to a truly hilarious detail out of all of this. Apparently, Trump was, quote, irked by the fact that he was referred to as Mr. Trump and not Mr. President or President Trump.
After that, he ascended the stairs of his plane, but I am told that the former president, one thing that irked him particularly was during that hearing today that lasted about 27 minutes, was when the magistrate judge referred to him as simply Mr. Trump. That may not sound odd to anyone else, but he is still referred to by his former title, President Trump, when he's at his Bedminster Golf Club in New Jersey, as he is tonight.
Which often you'll hear people refer to former presidents as President Obama or President Bush or President Trump. But the fact that it bothered him that in court he was referred to as Mr. Trump is rather hilarious to me. Let me know what you think of all of this. You can find me on Twitter or X at Luke P. Beasley. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to be a part of what makes this show possible, plus get access to the full video version of the show hours before all the clips are able to be uploaded to the YouTube channel, plus get the bonus show on the weekends, you can do so by going to lukebeasleyshow.com/membership. That's lukebeasleyshow.com/membership, and there's a link in the description.